Warning: the Not Real Art podcast is intended for creative audiences only. The Not Real Art podcast celebrates creativity and creative culture worldwide. It contains material that is fresh, fun and inspiring and is not suitable for boring old art snobs. Now, let's get started and enjoy the show.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow creatives. Welcome to Not Real Art, the podcast celebrating creativity, the creative class, and creative culture worldwide. I'm your host, Sourdough, and on today's episode, I'm honored to be joined by a true Renaissance man. He's first and foremost a painter, then a working actor and writer, husband, father, the one and only Michael Ornstein.
Hey,
Michael. How are you, brother?
good morning.
Oh, man, it's so good to see you.
You too, man.
Man, you're looking fresh, I got to tell you.
Clean shaven.
Oh, that's the trick, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do that. That's excellent. But you see, I mean, you know, last time I saw you, you're on the brink of moving. There was so much going on, obviously a lot of stress. You're kind of over the hump now. You've moved and now you're back in LA working for a few days or whatever. You seem lighter. You feel like, you know, you're over the hump.
Yeah, it feels really good to be going into a whole new world, moving to the Midwest, by the East Coast.
Man, Midwest. I grew up in the Midwest. I left in the Midwest for very good reason. Yeah. Great place to grow up. How are you finding it? Where are you exactly?
We're in Cleveland, actually.
Okay.
You know, and we're finding it pretty good. And, that's why we're there, man, to grow up. You know, we have two kids, 11 and 13. Yeah. And they've experienced so far New York City, Los Angeles. And now they're going to be, in this small little town that's containable.
Yes.
Go to a ball game, go to a concert, do whatever they want, hop on a train.
Listen, I mean, truth of the matter is I have, real concern and guilt sometimes about raising my kids in this crazy city of Hollywood, having grown up in the Midwest with those simpler pleasures or what have you. So I think that's great for your kids.
Yeah. I'm hoping, you know. And also, man, work-wise, I've always worked better like when I'm out of New York City, out of LA, out of a big city, out of, to look at it like, okay, this is where I go to work.
Yeah.
And here I am, and, I'm painting, and I have some time, and I'm writing. There's something about being, it's an objectivity that I gain, I think.
Yeah. Well, by the way, you have a great neighbor. Isn't Dave Chappelle a citizen of Ohio?
Is he?
Yeah, he actually is. Yeah, he totally is.
Yeah.
He has a whole bit about that, I think, where, why he lives in Ohio. Oh. Because I think he kind of grew up in Ohio for a bit, but he actually has a big farm there. He lives there full time.
Yeah, I just saw him. He was doing something with the people after the shooting in Dayton. He was working with these people, and he was talking about them and saying how wonderful they are and strong and resilient.
Yep.
Yeah, I love him, man.
So how many, you left LA, 2 months ago now?
Yeah, about 2 months. We packed up and I was still shooting, so I couldn't really travel. The plan was for all of us to drive cross country. Yeah. So we packed up all our stuff and, and then I was still working. So it ended up, Zoe and the kids flew out and I drove out twice. I drove the dogs out.
So romantic.
It was so great, man.
I love a good road trip.
Oh, me too. And it was the best this time, I mean, both times I hardly stayed in motels. I just drove, man. Yeah. Slept on the side of the road in rest stops.
Yeah.
And
real trucker style.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was like the greatest thing, man. Just total freedom.
Yeah.
To think and and I feel like, when you move to a place, it's good to drive there. It's good to have a journey to go there,
Yeah, I mean, not to be like too sort of, metaphorical about it or whatever, but when I moved to LA from Chicago, it was a rebirth for me and so like a reinvention in so many ways. And I insisted on driving and I wanted to the extent that I could take the old Route 66, which ironically starts at Jackson in Michigan in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, the original beginning of Route 66.
Oh, cool.
Was like literally the intersection of, it was either Jackson in Michigan or Van Buren in Michigan, but like right in there in the loop.
Cool.
And it basically went all the way across the U.S. and ended technically at Santa Monica Pier in Santa Monica.
Yeah, because Santa Monica Boulevard is called it's
exactly,
Route 66.
Exactly,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, oh, like this is like a rebirth. Like the Route 66 is like the birth canal, and I'm like, being reborn. I love a good road trip, man.
Yeah, me too, man.
I didn't want it to end.
I know, and they're rebuilding big parts of Route 66 now.
No kidding.
Yeah, they're reinstating it, which is really cool.
Yeah,
it's
that's
a great road.
man.
There's so many famous roads, like Highway 89. Goes up all the way up into Canada around Calgary, I think.
Okay,
and down through Montana, all the New Mexico.
I have to plead ignorance. I don't know about Route 89.
Yeah, it's the greatest. It's one of the most beautiful highways. I mean, there are like famous highways, Yeah,
well, our Highway 1 here in Cali, for example.
Oh, my God. I mean, one of the most famous highways in the world,
So, and you get one of the other benefits, right, of moving out of LA into the Midwest is you get a hell of a lot more for your money.
Oh, man.
I mean, I'm guessing you have acres or something.
Yeah, we have like 30 acres. No, we have like a really modest place, man. But it's like, we went back in time. We looked at Philly, we looked at Rochester, New York, we looked at Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, Austin, Nashville. Man, we looked everywhere. And nobody was looking at Cleveland. Nobody was talking about it.
Right.
When I started telling people we're moving to Cleveland, people were like, why? Is everything okay?
Jesus.
Yeah. It was different.
Right,
if I would have said Austin, it would have been, oh, great, Austin.
Yeah.
But like, no, and I was always really good at like finding neighborhoods in New York City to move to before they gentrified that I could still afford.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always had a knack for that.
Right.
And I feel like I did it again. Here, because it's got everything you would need.
Well,
it's
and
a great city.
Talk about the art scene in Cleveland.
Well, the art scene in Cleveland, I think, has a little connection to, I'm hoping, has a connection to the art scene in Detroit.
Sure.
2 hours away.
Right.
And then you got Pittsburgh right below it, another 2 hours. You got Chicago 5 hours that way.
Yeah.
You got Toronto 3 hours that way.
Yeah.
So I feel like what's going on in Cleveland, there's a lot of theater. The museum is like world class, man. I mean, it's free. There's a lot of philanthropy, and I'm not sure what is going on yet in Cleveland, but I want to have a lot to do with the art scene in Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you just got there, but no, that's so exciting, right? To think that you can have an impact.
Yeah,
right.
And there's a lot of street art there. I see it a lot.
Yeah.
And people think about it a lot. And, it's one of these cities like Winnipeg, it closes down in the winter.
Right.
So in the winter, artists figure out what they're doing and they kind of like hibernate. And then the spring comes and it's like, boom, So there's a lot of time I feel for artists in Cleveland to chill out with their work, with themselves.
Yeah, right. Sort of hibernate and gestate and right.
All that. Yeah. And out of that comes really good music and art and plays and, a lot of stuff.
I have to confess, I mean, I haven't looked at the map recently, but I had forgotten that Cleveland was sort of in the middle of so much action.
Yeah.
Detroit, Philly, Chicago, it's all kind of, Toronto, it's all right there.
It's right there. And then you got this raging, fucking lake.
Yeah.
This ocean of a lake.
Yep.
The Gordon Lightfoot song, the Evelyn Fitzgerald that was that lake.
Yes, dude.
The Witches of November.
The Great Lakes, man, are no joke.
Yeah.
I grew up on the south end of Lake Michigan, outside Chicago. And boy, it's serious water, serious body of water.
Big deal, man.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to hitting up with Detroit and Chicago. I love Chicago, man. I can't wait to be near it.
Well, I mean, being a theater guy,
I
mean, shit, Chicago is like...
It's like Mecca, man.
Yeah.
Steppenwolf.
Right.
Right. I mean, they were my idols, man. We got to work with them, and I had a theater company. I was a part of a Circle Rep theater company in New York, and we hooked up with Steppenwolf years ago, man, and did True West and Bomb and Gilead, which is a show that like changed my life, man. Directed by John Malkovich, and Terry Kinney, Gary Sinise, Jeff Perry, Glenn Edley, Laurie Metcalf.
The pedigree is just, I mean, it's world class. So you don't get better than those people.
Yeah. and the audiences, you know, that you get in the Midwest.
Right.
You know, I've done a lot of plays in the Midwest, you know, like 3-4 hour plays.
Well, you have like a deep connection with Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yeah, man.
Like that's so random. I mean, you know, specifically, I was born in Gary, Indiana. I grew up in Northwest Indiana. I've been to Terre Haute many times. And when you and I met and you were telling me about this Terre Haute connection, I was like, that's very random.
Yeah, it's amazing. This guy, Michael Tigley, he runs this place down there called Artsiliana, and you know, and I connected with him, and I just love it there, man. I have this painting, and it's like it's built around an old jailhouse, 150 years old. So the painting inhabits like 16 people who spent time in the jailhouse, and there's a lot of their stories, their epistles are like written onto the painting, and I showed it there. And while we were exhibiting the painting, I thought like, hey man, why don't we make a play out of this? So I arranged to like, you know, find like 16 actors, local actors, and we did it. They did it
inspired by your painting.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
And, you know, they said all the dialogue that was written on the painting, and it took 70 minutes to do. And there were all these people showed up, man, and it was like a performance. It was a play. I call it hand painted radio.
Oh, dude,
to do that.
That's fantastic.
You know? Yeah,
yeah. So, well, hand painted radio implies that play would be a great radio show, right?
Yeah.
Like you could do it as like a podcast.
That's right.
Right.
I'm obsessed with that old time radio.
Yeah,
just the sound, you know, and the imagination.
Yes, right. Well, that's it, right? It leaves it to your imagination. We're spoon-fed so much shit these days that we're not thinking for ourselves.
Yeah. You know,
right.
And hearing that, you know, sitting back and listening to a story, man, that's so ancient.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, and you got
that's
a little
campfire
time.
shit, man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's what we're all about, man.
Right.
Folktales.
That's so good.
You know?
That's so good. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about your painting is that you incorporate language so much.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're such a prolific painter. That's whole nother conversation. But one of the things that's always jumped out to me about your work is your integration of language, the written word, story.
Yeah.
Narrative.
Yeah, it's really important to me, man. I know it always has been. And really early on, when I was younger, when I was like 17, 18, and I would show my stuff to people, you know, a lot of people really hated that, you know, and really came down hard on me, you know, don't write on a painting. You can't write on a painting. What is this? It turns a painting into bullshit. Wow. A guy from a gallery told me that. Yeah. It turns a work of art into bullshit when you write on it.
That's not real art.
Yeah. You know, and I felt like, wow, that's fucking interesting. You know, words, story turns a painting into bullshit when you write on it because it reminds you of something, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's what's so dangerous, man, about people talking to young artists, you know, about stuff and saying shit like that because that stuck with me, man.
It did.
You know, and it made me do it better. It made me write more. You know?
Well, the arrogance, right? The arrogance of the intelligentsia of the art world. These fucking assholes that think that they know what art is when they can't paint themselves out of a fucking paper box or whatever bag. And probably every art movement throughout history. You know, the disruptor, innovator, painter, artist was told by the gatekeepers that day, well, that's not a real art. And now we study them in art school.
Yeah, that's right. You know, there are all these rules. You know, like you can't go beyond that line. You can't go beyond this line. You have to know the rules.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know any of the rules, man, because I never studied art. Right. I studied it on my own.
There's so many artists have not studied art.
Yeah, man. You know, I mean, where's the opportunity? There was no opportunity for me to study art when I was a kid, other than like I grew up outside of Manhattan.
Right.
So, you know, we'd go to New York City, go to the museums, go see all the shows, and you know, and go to the when Soho, before Soho was Soho. You know, my parents were into going to there was one place called Food.
Okay.
And we'd go there, they'd have a bulletin board, and artists who lived in the neighborhood, the squatting in the you know, old factories.
Yeah, in the old buildings,
You know, they would say, hey man, I'm having a show today. Come in. I'm having an open studio. And me and my parents, I was a little kid, you know, we would go up these gigantic staircases into a tremendous raw factory space, and somebody'd be working in there.
Right.
You know, and I would just sit there and watch them.
Right.
You know, and that was my education for art.
Dude, what a priceless experience for a young, impressionable, emerging artist.
It was so important, man, to just watch them work. And they wouldn't even look at me. I mean, they would just work.
Yeah, right.
You know, they were just happy to be there.
Right.
Some little kid, you know, with hair, a foot up on my head, you know, you know, just sitting there staring at them. And
so
also all the street art that was going on at the time.
Yeah, right.
You know, this is the 70s, the early 70s. So you had the trains coming from Brooklyn and from the Bronx, and you could see them, and they were up top, and hear them and see them. Like, what a show that was, man. To look up and feel that sound in your belly, you know, and see those colors coming like on trains, man. And there was one cat, I think his name was Richard Hamblin, I'm not sure.
Okay.
He would paint, like, I mean, I started seeing these figures all over Lower Manhattan and the Bowery and the Lower East Side, because that's where we went a lot, and because of Katz's Deli and shit. You know?
Right, yeah, sure.
And, you know, in Little Italy and Chinatown, and, you know, so there were these figures, and he used black paint, and they weren't aerosol. He used a brush, and he would hide them around a corner and a doorway, this, that. And when I was a little man, I mean, that to me was the most exciting thing, when I would find one and see one. You know, even if we were driving by and I would clock one, they took over my mind, man. These things, these figures. It's
like hide and seek or something, right? Like you're these things are hiding from you. You're seeking them, finding them.
Yeah.
What a cool impression. I mean, so they're just burned in your memory.
Burned in my memory.
Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, New York was awesome, man. It was dangerous as fuck. It was so dangerous.
It's so boring now.
It's so boring now. It's all gone. All the ethnic little beauties are gone.
It's called homogenization or gentrification or whatever.
Yeah, man.
It's sad.
But back then, I mean, you know, the graffiti, and that was different, man. That was just like very aggressive, and it was very mysterious. Because you never knew what he was trying to do with these figures. You know?
Right.
But it was around the time when people, you know, would get mugged regularly.
Yeah.
You know, you'd hear, I got mugged. Well, he was painting fear. And he was painting mystery.
Yeah, right.
I just loved it, man.
Yeah, I was listening to, this is kind of it's on point, but it's a random thing. But I was listening to an interview with Rob Zombie the other day, right? And he was talking about that era in New York. I guess it was late 70s for him. But he was talking about walking somewhere, and there was a dead body, you know, like in the street. Like the cops were just covering it up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. It was like, that city is an exciting place to live.
Yeah. I mean, so much came out of that, man. I mean, the whole independent film scene came out of that. CBGBs came out of it. The Ramones, Patti Smith, television, the Dead Boys. Yeah. You know, all of it. That was all happening.
And you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
By the way, okay, so hold on for a second. Let's give a shout out to your mom and dad.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I don't think I've ever actually asked you about your parents. I don't even know if they're still with us anymore.
Yeah, my dad is.
Yeah. So I mean, let's talk about your parents. I mean, you know, how did they influence your life? Because clearly it was epic. I mean, it was fundamental.
Yeah, it was fundamental. My mom was artistic. She realized I was artistic really young, you know, and she was always about all religions, teaching me about every single religion. You know, I was raised Jewish. My aunt, though, her sister was a nun. So my aunt was a nun. And I was Jewish. So, I got to learn all about, you know, what a nun is about, you know, and what
Catholicism
and Buddhism and Judaism, and out of that came Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, right.
You know, my mom turned me on to Joseph Campbell. My pop turned me on to Jack Kerouac when I was a child, and so I had like Joseph Campbell, Jack Kerouac, my aunt who's a nun, New York City, like all these people I met, and my mother was very into that. You know, she cultivated that. Like, I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, you know, because I would watch, like, you know, Jimmy Cagney movies with my grandfather, Humphrey Bogart, you know, at 3 o'clock in the morning when I would sleep over. That's what we would do. We'd watch old movies. Yeah. And I loved it. And I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be Bogart. you know, when I was like, 6 years old. I wore a hat. I dressed like my grandfather, wore a hat.
That's
tie.
amazing.
And I don't think I know.
I don't think I know. I don't think I knew who Bogart was at 6. So I envy you. Go ahead.
Well, not only did I know who Bogart was, I knew about the history of Italian and Jewish and Irish gangsters, in the city,
how
from
business
the
really
20s.
gets done.
Yeah,
right.
Like that was my world, and cowboys and all that stuff. So. So my mom dug it, that I wanted to be an actor. So when I was like 12 years old, she's like, okay, you want to study acting? And I said, yeah, I do. Mm-hmm. So she took me to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, and I studied with really serious people there, man.
Yeah,
I mean, people were smoking and eating egg sandwiches in class, the teachers and drinking coffee.
Right.
They were working artists, and they were older people coming from, the generation, like 2 generations before me, man.
Yeah.
And the first play I ever did was a Eugene Ionesco play called Rhinoceros. I mean, this like totally profound, surreal piece.
And how old were you?
I was like 12 years old, man. And we did it for real. It was great, man. Yeah. And then after that, I wanted to study, all the people from the group theater, like Lee Strasberg. Mm-hmm. So I went to Lee's school, Saturday classes. Yeah. Matt Dillon was in my class. It was a kick-ass class. It was great, man. And, I was doing like sensory work, when I was like 13 years old, really cool. Learning how to relax my body, learning how to catalog my memories, learning how to really, explore my mind and my psyche when I, 13. And
no wonder you're a super weapon.
I took it real serious because I would go back to Jersey. I wouldn't even talk about it. Nobody knew I was doing that. I wasn't an actor.
This is spiritual development.
Hell yeah.
Right.
For real, man. In a big way. And I just kept it 100% private. I didn't act or audition, or I wasn't interested in that at all. I just wanted to develop. I wanted to be an artist because I grew up in Jersey, man. I didn't know any artists. I never met an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I figured, well, I don't know if I'm even from here. I got to find my people. And I found my people in these people who taught me, and people who would come into class. Like a lot of people would just come in a class, like friends of the teachers. They would bring them in, and people would talk about what they were working on, what they were doing. And then when I was 16 or 14 or 15, I went to Stella Adler's school. And one day she came in to the actual Saturday class, and Stella Adler was just like, an idol of mine, and she came in and we became like friends, man, like me and her. It was insane. She invited me to go to her adult classes, and my mom would take me in. It was nighttime, and and with me and my mom would go and do something, go to a cafe or whatever,
while you were in class.
Yeah. And then after her class, she would come in. First off, she would, sit in a throne. So she would enter the room and sit in a big throne. Yeah. And, it was a scene study class. That's what she, so after the class, she said, don't say anything ever in class, but after, come and talk to me. So I would go and talk to her in her dressing room and ask her all these questions. And one time she said, never put your head on the pillow unless you change the world that day. And I was like, holy shit, wow, man.
No pressure there.
Fucking 15 years old. I was like, all right. And that was it's so clear to me. I mean, I could see her face saying it, and I remembered it, and I just I was like, okay, I'm still doing that, and that means, make a painting or write something or, tell your child you love them in a new way that's going to
impact culture.
Something that moves you forward, something that could move the world forward, but moves you forward.
Yeah, that's right.
Makes you better.
So I want to clarify something, because one of the things that I've always, and you and I have known each other now a few years, and one of the things that you've always been clear about with me is that you think of yourself first and foremost as a painter.
Yeah.
Right. And as I'm listening to you talk right now in your journey, right, as a young boy, clearly these acting classes and, they played a prominent role. But were you painting and drawing during this time as well? When did you start putting pen to paper?
Yeah, like I never stopped. Like when I was, a child, I drew like every child draws.
Yeah, right. Right.
But like I just never stopped.
Okay.
And I just like got different materials, basically. You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
Like, so, I went from whatever I was drawing with when I was a little kid. And then, there was a really important store in my hometown.
Okay.
And it was a stationery store, right? And they had this like section of art stuff, like charcoal pencils, pencil sharpeners that were different, they were metal.
Right.
They had notebooks and they had black books and they had all kinds of paper. And the guy who was running it, his son worked there. And he looked just like Cat Stevens.
No kidding.
Back then.
Yeah, right.
Early 70s, And he was a hippie. And he had like, a beard and long hair and curly hair. And he would teach me about what this stuff was, because I would ask him all these questions all the time. Right. And the shop was right around the corner from my pop's business, so I would go there all the time and start experimenting with whatever I found there in the shop, colors and different papers and different paints and stuff like that. So growing up, that's what I started doing. And that too, I kept it completely private.
Interesting.
I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. I just painted and messed around, with oil paint and anything I could get my hands on. But you weren't
showing these art creative pieces to anyone else.
Nobody.
It was a private thing.
Not even really my parents. Like I didn't. I didn't have any impulse whatsoever to show anything to anybody. I was just
super
doing it. And
you didn't need that validation. You didn't want that. You didn't want that. It wasn't even on your mind.
Like if anything, I was afraid that somebody was going to take it away from me.
Interesting,
because my dad was never so keen that I was interested in art or acting or anything like that.
He wanted you to have a real job or something.
Yeah, he wanted me to go into business with him.
Yeah,
what
business was he in?
He was in the garment business. Which I found to be beautiful because of all the people who were in it with him. But
it's a creative field for sure.
Definitely, man. But like that wasn't. I knew real early on that where I was headed. And so I just really didn't want anybody to take what I was, because I didn't know it. I was a kid, and still to this day, man. I feel the same way.
Right.
It's like I'm in the middle of figuring something out.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is yet. Right. So I don't want anybody to come in and start telling me this and that or do this or do that. I want to figure it out, because if I figure it out, I'll figure it out my way.
Yes.
And then I could always learn the conventional way.
Of course.
You could always learn convention.
Yeah.
And I'm into that.
Well, what I appreciate about your story is that, the conventional process might say, you know what, learn the rules and then figure out your voice.
Right.
Or your point of view or whatever. And, how fortunate you were to be in a situation where you could figure out your voice and your point of view first.
Right.
Right.
Because I had no one to teach me convention.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, Google something.
Right.
We didn't have that.
No. Yeah.
And there
didn't
were
exist.
Absolutely no painters except for my mom.
Yeah.
And my dad painted a little bit.
Interesting.
But like the only reference that I had was going to these studios when I was a kid, and seeing people work,
right?
And people were working large scale, and they were painting with like vicious material and getting paint everywhere, and really in the midst of what they were doing, and that's what I learned from. I remembered it. I remembered a friend of my folks, her name was Ronnie, and she owned a shop called Wearable Art in Soho. It was really one of the first shops down there. And one day we visited them. They had a brownstone down around Jane Street. And I remember going there, and her husband was out in the patio in the back. And we hung out with her, because my folks went to high school, grew up with her.
Yeah.
And but the husband, he just stayed in the back. He didn't even come and say hello, and he was painting, right? And I was looking at him, and like, just a little kid, and I just went out. I just got up because they weren't talking to me or anything. I was just sitting there, and I went and I hung out with him in the back. And again, man, he didn't even fucking look at me. You know, he just like let me be there, and like I was a cat or a dog or something. You know,
hell, he might not have known you were there. He might have been in his own world. Right?
I bet. I never even thought of that. You know? And he just worked. And for the whole time that we were there, I was just sitting there looking at him, watching what he was doing, and. You know, he had a shirt off. He was wearing like cut off jean shorts and no shoes or nothing, you know, and it was just like he was in his own house, in his own world, man. And, you know, I heard that we were getting ready to leave. They were getting up. So I went in the other room and we went toward the front door. And then I turned around and there he was. And he shook my hand and he introduced himself as we were leaving and gave me like the biggest smile, and it meant so fucking much to me. And that's maybe why I didn't feel like showing or didn't feel like doing anything, because of the feeling that I saw these artists not paying me any mind.
Yeah.
They weren't looking at me and saying, "Hey, what do you think? You got any questions? Hey, I'm doing this and I'm doing that." And no. They were just doing their thing.
It was for them on a certain level.
Man.
Right.
And if someone was sitting there learning or digging it, that's cool too.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool too. One time I went to college for a year, you know, for acting. And the same thing, this guy, Bruce Furtman, did this in our movement class. It was like he was doing martial arts. He was gonna teach us Tai Chi and Aikido. So the first class that I ever had in movement, a real serious movement class, he greeted us. He was doing Tai Chi for like a half an hour. Yeah. We walked into the room. He was doing Tai Chi. For a half an hour, we watched him do Tai Chi. Right.
And that's all. He was just doing Tai Chi, and the class was about you coming in and watching.
Right. And feeling that energy. Yeah. Not a word, man. Right. Just, this is where you are now. Right. Welcome to my world.
That's so powerful, too. Tai Chi, I remember years ago, I was traveling. I was in San Francisco International Airport, and it was one of those rush hour kind of deals where it's like, the plane's taking off at like 6 p.m. Everyone's done their work and everyone's rushing to their planes to get home or whatever. And it was just madness in the terminal, right? And I'm going down and I'm walking, and there's this beautiful Chinese woman. She's probably, I don't know, she was probably in her 20s, young gal. And she's doing Tai Chi at her gate.
Wow.
She's waiting for her plane. And it was arguably, certainly one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen, period, because she was the calm of the storm as the world was raging around her. She was at peace doing this Tai Chi movement. Yeah, I mean,
beautiful, right?
So
it just like stops time. It redefines time.
It does.
It's like an invitation,
right,
to go to a place where there's no time,
and a reminder of how hectic and crazy our time can be if we don't slow down.
Yeah,
right?
And dealing with energy.
Yeah,
you're dealing with energy, man. Your own energy, and you're inviting other people to join in your, bring their energy.
And obviously, what do I know? But like, I'm still tripping out on the fact that there are classes focused on movement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal, man.
And of course it is, right? Like, I've never thought about it. But of course, if you're an actor or you're studying acting, like, I can totally see that movement would be a core discipline.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. Painting, even writing. It's about movement. Even if you're sitting there with a typewriter or a computer or, dictating, it really is about movement, starting with the breath. And then moving your body by what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And you could define a whole character. I mean, the Sons of Anarchy, Mayans with Chucky, his movement is really fucking important to me, man. And, throughout, everything that's going on in his head. It's really what's in his body that I'm working on. And every character that I've ever done, I find that character through how they move and through how they, because how you move informs how you breathe and how you talk and how you look at things and how you think. It's all about how you move. When you watch like Montgomery Clift or like Jimmy Dean, Marlon Brando, all those guys, I mean, they were deep into a movement. And what's wild is that me coming up, I mean, I think I was like the last generation that really had a connection to what those guys were doing.
So not to interrupt, but I have a question. So would you say that the young actors these days that are coming on into the biz are embracing and studying and learning the fundamentals in the way that you did in your generation?
I feel like if they go to Juilliard or some really great program, like I went to Mason Gross School of the Arts in Rutgers. It was a Meisner technique, voice, movement, acting, everything. If you go to one of those programs and they're teaching it in an old school, pure way. I
bring that up because in the visual arts side, like I remember, there's a lot of these, they tend to be for-profit art schools or what have you. But I've been very disappointed in looking at portfolios of students who have graduated because it seems like many of these programs skip over the fundamentals, say, of sketching.
Yeah.
Right. They're going, seemingly they're going right into learning Photoshop.
Right.
It's and I'm like, wait
heartbreaking.
a minute. I want to see your sketchbook. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I want to see how you think. What do you mean? Your sketching shows me how you think.
Right.
And
it's the basis for everything that they're doing. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, it's that old school, 2 generations back, people who were, in their 80s when I was, 18.
Yeah.
Those people were my friends.
Right.
And people like Anna Sokolow, she was my dance teacher. I mean, she was in Martha Graham's original company. I knew people who were in the group theater. And the technicalities, these beautiful technicalities that you base your whole shit on for the rest of your life.
Right.
I mean, when they were young, I mean, like, when they were young, that was very serious. It was a trade. You were learning a craft. You were learning something.
Yes.
You were learning how to sharpen a pencil. It's like when you talk to a sushi chef or see Hero Dreams of Sushi or whatever, how they talk about like, the omelet, making an egg, the simplest thing and finding, the most technical difficulties in this most simple thing and really getting into it. You need that tool, man. I mean, as an artist, I went out and found that shit. That's what I was like questing for when I was playing with all those different materials.
And I'm spitballing here. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm totally off base, but I'm willing to speculate that a lot of those teachers that you had were probably first generation American or immigrated from Europe. So there was probably this hardcore European thing going on where it's like, no, you are nothing, and you will learn this.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'll beat it into you one way or another. Right.
It was tough, man.
Yeah. Rigor. Very rigorous.
A lot of rigor. Yeah. I mean, if someone did what happened every few minutes in a class when I was a kid, if someone talked to a student like that now, they would be in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, it's like you read about Picasso, Van Gogh, Modigliani, you read about these people and how they came up. I mean, they were sent to, very serious schools, man, and learned, the basics like Da Vinci learned, like anyone learned, through the years. Yeah. Like my kids right now, they don't even know how to write cursive. I mean, my kids actually know how to write cursive.
But
you know what I mean?
Kids these days, they're just typing.
Yeah, they're just typing. Yeah. And now, the way like an iPhone is or this or that, you don't even have to type anymore.
All right.
You could just dictate. So all of our tools are being taken away from us.
Right.
And if if the battery goes out, man, you got to have a pencil. You got to be able to know how to draw.
Yeah, right.
It's really fucking important.
Yeah.
Because, somebody told me really early on, a director, his name was Joe Rose, like the first play I ever did. And he said, that, it's like a tennis match, man. You got to have boundaries. You got to have something that you're working inside of for discipline to give you freedom. It's really important to have rules and boundaries and stuff like that.
It's focus too.
Yeah, it's focus, man. You need to be in there. Like if you're improving, the improvisational artists, people who do that live, they have really rigorous boundaries, man, and that's what makes them that free. They have work. They're connected to the people they're working with, and they know where they're going.
Yeah,
because they have these boundaries, and that opens up the world to them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Right.
It gives them so much freedom. So I think it's really important, man, that people stay away from the computer. Really stay away from it.
It's a luxury. It's a luxury.
Yeah,
and you need your fundamentals in place before you go play with these powerful tools that they have their place.
Yeah,
but they're not. They're a means to the end, but they're not the end.
Yeah, they're not.
But I want to go back because this whole conversation we're having about you studying movement as an actor or what have you, or the power, the importance of movement in all of these things, like. What I appreciate about this is that I'm seeing your painting in a new way now, having this conversation, because your paintings have such energy that is all about the movement of the brush and your hand and maybe if there's a writing, language, narratives written into the paint. There's a flow there, and I just in all candor had never really thought about how your mindful movements or your mindfulness around movement might be informing your painting.
Yeah, like a lot. Like a whole
it's totally
lot.
clear to me now.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I like to, with my paintings, I mean, like I like to put them in a place where they're sort of in flux, where you can see the movement, you can see the mistakes, you could see, where I was headed with one thing or where I was headed with another thing, so that when you're looking at one of my paintings, when they're looking at one of my paintings, to feel the movement inside the painting and go from this place to this place to this place to that place to this place to that place. And I want them to work with me and meet me halfway and form that painting.
Yes.
It's like I want my paintings. I want to leave my paintings in midair, and have them be unfinished, so that the viewer, in communicating kind of with me, with the painting in the middle, finishes the painting.
Sure.
Like when I write on a painting, I'm writing on the painting. I'm not transcribing on the painting. Sometimes I am. Sometimes I do that.
Right.
But most of the time, like on that piece with the 16 stories, epistles, whatever. Yes. I mean, I grabbed a pen. I wrote in. I had the penmanship actually reflect the character that I was, and I was like, they were just flowing through me, and I was writing in real time on the thing. And every piece of penmanship is completely different. One guy I wrote backward. I didn't think about that. Wow. I just wrote it. Everything was backwards. So you put it in a mirror, it's perfect.
Right.
But I think I'm all about movement. I feel like to me, movement is more important than depth.
Interesting.
Just to get it out there, and leave it in a place where I feel like if I touch even one tiny dot, I got to start all over again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just leave it like in the pinnacle of some sort of movement in midair.
This also, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it on a certain level, it sort of helps to explain your prolific output.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's again, one of the things I've appreciated about you as a visual artist, as a painter, is that you are fucking prolific, dude.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just throw that's why I call my stuff monkey language, because it's my language, and I'm like just a monkey. It's like you put me in a studio, and I have whatever materials I have. I like to keep my materials kind of light too.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, be wanting, and, so I'll have my materials, I'll have whatever is there that day. And even if I have to paint on the back of paintings, I'll go do that.
Well, and the other distinction too is it is clear to me how serious a painter, or how serious you are about your painting, but I don't think for a moment that you're actually precious about your painting, if that makes sense.
No, in no way.
Right.
I mean, in no way. I mean, I have my own preciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm precious to not polish it. I'm
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm precious
right.
to.
Yeah.
You know what it is, man? For real, I'm precious to keep me the fuck out of my paintings.
Wow, that's deep.
If I see me in my fucking paintings, if I see an idea that I had that I tried to do and really hard, it's done, man.
Well, that implies the fact that you are a vessel.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. You're just trying to open yourself up to be a channel, a medium, a vessel for something else, not you.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's like I show up in the morning, man. I light a cigarette. I have a cup of coffee. I look around me. I check it out. But mainly what I'm doing is I'm feeling myself, and I'm feeling where I'm at. And I'm doing just what Bruce Ferdinand did when he was doing that Tai Chi in his studio. And I'm feeling myself out. The kids are in school, everything is kind of done. I'm here to work, and I'm feeling it out. And then I go to work, and whatever I'm feeling that day is applied to whatever work I do, whether it's working on a painting I've had for 25 or 30 years or something that I'm just starting. And I love to throw new materials at myself so that in itself is an exploration.
Yes.
And that painting comes out of me experimenting with brand new materials and new colors. And what's awesome is that Montana keeps coming out with like brand new colors, brand new textures, brand new everything all the time. So it's like an unending fountain of brand new shit.
Yeah.
And I paint a lot with like raw pigment and marble powder and stuff like that, and inks and all kinds of surfaces, plastics, metals, like glass, like canvas, burlap, whatever the fuck I could find, different papers, just to keep it fresh and just to really understand nothing but continue going, and if I do understand something, I have that tool where I could forget something.
Right.
I could like literally learn something, know about it, know all I can possibly know about it, and then put it in my back pocket and forget about it. That I learned from acting, from Meisner, Sandy Meisner. Do your homework, he would say. Do all your homework. Know this front and back and intricately. Then right before you go on stage though, put it in your pocket, forget it 100% and go and listen to the people you're working with, and react truthfully, and that's what I try to do with my paintings, man. I try to just do exactly that. I've been painting, 50 years, and, I know what I'm doing for what I do, for my, flavor of doing. I know that.
Right.
And, but when I'm painting, I don't want to know anything other than that I'm literally a vessel and that shit is coming through me. I have no idea where these stories come from. I don't know. I don't know where these colors or images come from. I paint a lot of people.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
It's like sometimes my grandfather comes up a lot. This woman with red hair comes up a lot, this reddish brown hair, I used to have a recurring dreams about her. Now my daughter looks exactly like her.
Yeah.
All these paintings, my daughter's starting to look exactly like this girl,
That's so deep.
Do a painting and say, oh man, that was that cat who was sitting across from me when, on the subway train, going out to like, I remember that guy or, this and that. It's like I catalog faces.
Yeah.
And not just faces. Like I try to paint people the way they look when they're sitting on a subway train after a hard day. The way they look when they're just within themselves, just thinking about their lives in a state of like meditation, safety, and they're just sitting there on the train. That's what I try to paint. And a lot of people think they look sad, but I don't think they look sad. I think people look most beautiful when they're just with themselves without any mask of emotional.
And again, that gets to a point, one of the reasons why I've always appreciated your work is that there's a humanity to it, I think.
Thanks.
I mean, it's not, well, I mean, that's it for me. I mean, it obviously would resonate differently with different people, but I've always thought there was a humanity to it. I didn't necessarily know why that was, but now, you're unpacking that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important to me to like Studs Terkel, Anthony Bourdain, people who were interested in talking to people and having those people's stories be told.
Sincere interest.
Yeah. It's really important to me.
Yeah.
And to represent another human being in a state where they are, is really important to me. And just to make it honest.
Yeah.
Like I read about the riots in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. Never knew about that. I came upon it, years ago, like just by chance, man.
What was a racial thing or what was happening?
It was a white woman said that a black elevator operator, some kid, raped her, or she was she made up a story,
Fuck.
And it ended up, these guys got on their crop planes and dropped bombs onto the shanty towns, where all the people lived, burned down, people's houses, thousands of houses and stuff like that. So I did these 4 paintings, a grandson, a mother, a father, and a grandfather, just came out of that. And that just happened, man. It just came out. And once it comes out, I follow it, but now I have a representation of the Tulsa riot of 1921. It's really important to me. And the people who own those pieces are also really very, very important to me. They're amazing artists who own these pieces. And and they know the story and they know who those people are. So it's really important to me, man, when somebody has one of my pieces, that they know where it's coming from and they know that it's a piece of history and it's really about something. And it's about something in the way that an old Delta blues folk song or, is about a flood,
Right.
That's like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Stagger Lee. There's 40,000 versions of the song Stagger Lee.
Yeah.
All these stories. And there was even a steamship, a river boat named Stacko Lee.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of stories, man, throughout history. But that story, is thousands of years old. The story about John Henry, with his hammer. Thousands of years old. It applies to everything. A guy works so hard, against the system that it kills him. He lays down his hammer, his wife picks it up and keeps going.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? That's like, that's in us. We're born with that.
Yeah.
Thousands and millions of years ago, whatever.
Right.
And it's just a way of telling these stories. And, I guess when you're alive in a certain time, that's your time to tell stories about your time.
Yeah.
But drawing on history, like you were talking about before, like history is important, man.
Well,
really
now
important.
and now more than ever, right?
Yeah.
It feels like, we've never been great at remembering history, but certainly it feels now we tend to repeat history because we don't remember it or don't know it in the first place.
Yeah, and we got to be real careful, man, because times like these can lead us back like in just the turn of a screw, man.
Yeah, man.
And it's really dangerous. So I know a lot of young people, right now they ain't interested in history. Whatever happened 5 years ago or before that, doesn't really apply, and all that because of where perspectives are. But it's really important to know history. You got to know your history because that's what makes you a warrior. It makes you strong.
Well, and this also just gets back to the bigger part of the conversation too, about being a student of your craft. Know your shit.
Know your shit.
We were talking about, Google earlier and not having Google when we grew up. I'm 49. I don't know how old you are. You look
56.
Like you're 30.
Thanks.
Yeah, you look fucking great. But so we didn't have the access to this information. We actually had to go to the fucking library and check out a book and read a book,
or talk to an old man,
or talk to a mentor, an expert, older person.
Yeah.
now we're living in, feels like the kids, they YouTube it, they Google it, they feel like they know it. And it's like, no, dude.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
No.
And they know things, like they'll know who covered the song for people out.
Right.
But they won't know where it came from.
Yeah, you do know that it's a cover of the original that was 30 years,
but like they don't know that.
No.
And like when I was a kid, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Like first time I heard Patti Smith or read. Okay, so I was obsessed with Patti Smith. She was like I was in love with when I was like 12 years old. She was like my Marilyn Monroe, man. Yeah. And, she just blew my mind, She talked a lot about Rimbaud. I read about Jim Morrison, who also talked about Rimbaud, and he talked about Nietzsche, and so did she, So I went to my librarian in 7th grade or whatever, and I said, I want a book by Nietzsche, and she sent me to the principal. What? They almost threw me out of school.
What?
For asking for that. And I was like, what the fuck? Are you people nuts? I'm reading, and that was the other thing, studying acting, because people would turn me on to these books and turn me on to these concepts, and then I would bring my mind back to New Jersey and try to like get it, and
you were being corrupted by the freaks in New York City. Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? But it was really important to me to know my history, and to learn that, Baudelaire, and then Rimbaud, and then this person, and then that person, and, on and on.
You wouldn't go to a doctor that didn't go to medical school.
Exactly.
So, Doc, what's your qualification? Well, I watched a video on YouTube. Right. I Googled it.
Yeah. I bought some equipment.
That's right. I got this awesome set of surgical tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't they make me look official? Yeah.
I feel that your problem might be in your neck. Let's start there.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. You got to know your shit. You got to know where you're coming from.
So what do you do? So what are you doing? Obviously you're a dad, you got your own kids to raise, but in terms of giving back and helping younger kids coming up, and where's your mind at on that? Are you able to coach and to teach at all? Or you maybe that's down the road for you?
I'm like dying to do that, man.
Yeah.
I got a whole thing like written out. I have a whole outline of what I would really love to do is I would love to have a school where I teach what I do. I teach writing and dance even, man, and acting and painting and, creativity, where you teach creativity and you teach how all these different what would you call them, genres feed into one another. Yep. And how if you know them all and you're really skilled at all of these different things, how they feed into one another, and how you're never going to run dry. You could just keep drawing from writing and from music and from all of these different genres. And that's one really exciting thing about moving to Cleveland.
Right.
That I could teach. I would love that, and visit all these different schools. There are tons of schools,
And what a hunger or a need, there is for such a thing. I grew up, went to public school in the Midwest, but we actually had at our school, in our community, we had a good tax base. It was working class, but everybody was employed and doing well, solid middle class. So our high school, had a great liberal arts education. So we had academics and honor classes, things like that, but yes, of course we had sports, but we had arts, we had music, we had theater, we had, and all that shit's being cut now.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's all gone.
Yeah, who's going to make up the gap? Well, you and I are going to make up the gap. Hell, this is why I'm doing this podcast, in fact, because I'm thinking of the 16-year-old in Cleveland who doesn't have access to this, and maybe they'll stumble upon this podcast and get a window into this world that they're hungry for.
Right. In an honest way, man.
Yeah, and for free and in an honest way, and it feeds their soul, it feeds their mind, inspires them.
Yeah. It's really important, man. Back at one point I lived in Canada outside of Montreal, and I was figuring out, okay, what could I do here? So I found a place. I worked with like Alzheimer's patients.
Wow.
And I would go in once a week and I would say to them, draw your house where you grew up. draw your house. And people would draw their houses where they grew up, and like they were able to like talk about them, and I would ask them questions about their houses. Yeah. But you know, they were totally not in the moment, you know, but like with their houses, they remembered that, you know, and like throughout, like when I lived on Cape Cod, all the time, I would every chance I would try to connect with young people. I was showing a lot there, you know. Yeah. So I would invite classes to my where I was showing and talk about the work, and you know, just let them ask questions. You know, just a lot of questions. So I'm hoping to do a lot of that there in Cleveland, you know, and work with young people, because it is our responsibility, man. I mean, we're the people who have to make it available. Yes. You know, because the art is being cut, of all things. Art is cut. And history isn't taught very much either. Right. You know, and there's art civics, and history go hand in hand.
On and on and on. Yeah. You know? Yeah, man. You know? And we have obviously, you know, middle-aged guys. I mean, we have a responsibility and a duty.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to step in, man, and really make that, because I mean, that's what's important. Even if people don't grow up to be artists, you know, it's important that they have that experience and they know that that's available to them.
Well, and you know, our listeners have heard me tell this story many times, but you know, Gordon McKenzie's book, Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Gordon was the chief creative officer at Hallmark Cards for years and years and years. And he wrote Orbiting the Giant Hairball to really focus on, I mean, the subject of the book is really about how do you maintain your artistic integrity when you're working in a corporate environment, right? Yeah. But the story a story he tells in the book is he would go speak to school kids, and you know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and on and on. And he always started his talks with the same question: who here is an artist? In kindergarten, every kid raises their hand. Yeah. Right. Well, by third grade, like maybe one kid. Wow. Every year it just went down and down. Right? Yeah. And his whole point is, what the hell are we doing? Right. Yeah. To school, you know, to these kids. And yet creativity is the only thing that's really going to solve the existential problems that face mankind.
Absolutely. I mean, it's science, it's medicine. Yes. I mean, creativity is everything. Yes. There's nothing that, you know, I mean, you know, if two tree branches blow into each other, you know, from wind in nature, creativity has nothing to do with that. But everything else, creativity has something to do with.
But how those limbs land on the ground on each other, you know, somebody walks up and goes, oh wait, that would actually make a really good shelter if I laid some pine boughs on that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's that,
and even building the first shelter, building the first fire, that was creative, man. Yeah, that was a creative fucking act.
And that's a key point. I think we have such a one-dimensional, you were talking about these people in, you know, New York or whatever telling you, you know, that's not art because you write on it. I mean, we have such one-dimensional perspectives on what art might be or what creativity is. No, if you're a scientist, if you're a mathematician, if you have to understand the principles of creativity to innovate in your field.
Yeah, and to be deep and to be, you know, and to have some compassion, man.
Yeah, empathy.
Empathy, and to understand where you're coming from. So it's really like, if we cut out that from the schools, we're really creating a bunch of robots who just take tests. Yep. Because my kids, you know, that's all they talk about. I mean, you know, my kids are being educated through Google Classroom. Yeah. Right? Right. I mean, why even go to school? Why don't they just sit home, plug into their computer, and take tests? And that's it. Yeah. Anybody, you know, monkeys could take a test. You know what I mean? A chicken could take a test. Yeah. It's not about taking a test, man. It's about learning something.
How to think.
And how does that apply to my life? Right. And that comes out of creativity. That's why schools like Montessori's and Waldorf schools and all these, you know, different concepts of how to teach kids, you know, are so popular. I mean, like, you know, the Waldorf technique came out. That guy was a German military man.
Okay. And, I don't know the story.
You know, I mean, it came out of like his, you know, experience in the German military, and it ended up being, you know, it's a way to teach children in a creative way where they learn at their own pace and follow their own interests.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Great. I mean, it's really important, man. Yeah. We're creating adults. We're creating people who are going to be walking and talking one day.
Right.
And again, man, I mean, years ago, everyone knew how to draw. Everyone knew a different language.
Yeah.
Everyone knew how to write. People were raised on real literature, man, real books, and and knew how to write and knew how to do things and knew how to cook.
And by the way, knew how to go outside and play and skin their knee. And and be better for it.
All that.
Yeah.
And all that shit is very important. It's really important. I mean, like, Halloween's coming up. What we do is, we dress up and we have fun and we go out and collect candy and hang out with our friends.
Yeah.
That's what's still happening now.
Yeah.
What would happen in 10 years from now if Halloween was just like, you're online and, you get an app and you collect candy?
Right.
I mean, if it was, boiled down to that. And
well, by the way, that could totally happen. I mean, if God forbid something weird happened on a Halloween and there was some, God forbid, criminal terrorist act.
Yeah.
Halloween would be over in a heartbeat.
In a second. Done. It would be like, oh my God, how could we have ever gone to someone's house and accepted candy?
It's like, how could we be free? We can't be free anymore.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're not willing to die for our freedom.
Right. And we're putting our own selves in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, man, it's all really important, and the most important thing, no matter what you do, I mean, like, is that you have a sense of what art is and what creating art feels like, that you have a sense of that.
For sure, brother. For sure.
And so, I mean, Kafka was a clerk, man.
Yeah.
He wrote all that stuff. He was working in an office. And Bukowski, he was working in a post office. That's where he wrote that shit from. That's what he did every day. And a lot of artists had jobs.
Yep.
Like jobs all the time. I've had more jobs than anybody, who, I mean, I know people, I didn't mean to say I've had more jobs than anybody. What I meant to say is most people just have one job. That's their job. They work in the post office.
Yeah.
They're a garbage man. They're a pilot. They're this, they're that. They're that. Artists have to have millions of jobs.
Yeah.
You have to have a job that suits wherever the fuck you're living. You have to have a job that suits your timeline.
Well, and by the way, but let's connect the dots here a little bit, because this kind of gets back to creativity, because on a certain level, we're coming into a time, we are in a time, right, where the one job for 30 years is no more, right? We're going into the so-called gig economy where people are having to fend for themselves and learn how to make ends meet. And maybe some people feel desperate. Maybe some people are angry and pissed off, and they should be, because they can't find a good, healthy, proper job that can last them. But so what do? You're left on your own. You have to get creative.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, well, okay, how can I make money?
That's right. You got to work it out, man. I mean, like, I was talking to a guy last night. He was a restaurant manager for many years. Now he's driving an Uber.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the guy who invented Uber, he wasn't doing anything before that. And then he came up with Uber and he invented that. That's creative.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. We need these tools, man. We need these tools, like you're saying, to figure out what to do for a living, because yeah, you're right. Going to school, studying something, and then getting a job in your field and retiring on it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like not happening so much anymore.
Yeah. From what I understand, the one thing that artificial intelligence, at least not yet, and not anytime soon, perhaps, the one thing human beings have over AI is our ability to connect the dots in unexpected, creative ways.
Yeah.
And if we're not teaching creativity from kindergarten up, right? If we're not teaching, it's just like with a foreign language. You teach a foreign language from kindergarten up.
Yeah.
Languages are so much easier for kids.
Yeah,
And if we're not teaching our kids how to think and be creative, how can we expect them to be creative and think differently?
Yeah. It's scary, man. And we really do have to, for our own future, we really have to take it seriously.
For sure, brother. Well, and here's the thing, like, I'm so grateful, Michael, that you're here today. I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation, because hopefully this conversation that you and I are having is gonna inspire and help our listeners in some way, address their own artwork, whatever it might be, their own creative expression, whatever it might be. You, my friend, are here in LA.
Yes.
You're here for a shoot. You know, the conversation today was so deep. Let's go superficial for a minute. Okay. Right? Okay. Tell our listeners where they can see you on the TV, because you're shooting the Mayans right now, right? Which is amazing. Talk about what's happening.
So we're doing Mayans MC. It opened a few weeks ago, premiered a few weeks ago. We're running right now. We're on 10 o'clock on Tuesday nights on FX, and it is a beautiful, beautiful experience. Got to see the show. I'm loving it so much.
We're in season 3 now?
Season 2.
2, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just the most heartfelt, experience. I love it. I love the people I'm working with. The scripts are amazing. The story is timely and deep and personal, and it's a really different experience, for TV.
Now, when are you? So you come back how often to shoot now?
It
varies, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it varies. Like in future, I'll come in when I'm needed to be here. And what's great about that, man, is that I'll be living in Cleveland, in a house with my wife and my kids and my dogs and, all that stuff. And then, get on a plane and go to work and then show up like a savage, man, like an animal. And that's how I like it. Right. I like to work that way, so that I'm just 100% focused on the world I'm in, staying in a motel up by where we're shooting and just
you guys shoot up. Where
we shoot out in the desert.
Boonies. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, where it looks like, Mexico. It looks like right there. We got all that beautiful land, man, where we could just go and go and go. Oh,
that's so awesome, good man. For the soul, man.
I've been waiting since I'm 10 years old, man, to be in this gig right here.
Wow.
For real. I looked around myself. I just looked around. I said to myself, man, this is where it's at. This is what I wanted. Like when I was a little kid, I wanted to be right here.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. Just at the, at the people.
But how beautiful is it that you got there, but B, that, you're mindful and grateful enough to see it, know it, appreciate it, call it out.
100%, man. I'm thankful every day that I could still paint or write, put 2 words together, or show up on set and really truthfully be there, in a big way. I'm thankful for that every single day, and I try to cultivate it.
Are you able to sort of segment or bifurcate when you're acting? Are you thinking about your visual art at all? Do you have your black book? Are you sketching at all, or do you really kind of keep those things separate?
It's like, it's always happening at the same time. It's just the focus is more on the acting. Right. It's like when I'm doing a play out of town. Yeah. It's like I'll fucking, before I come home, when I'm getting ready to come home, I'll be packing my bag and realize I have like 15 canvases here, man. How am I going to get home? I've had to take trains from, gigs instead of flying, stuff like that. Yeah. But it's like, everything, it's like almost like riding in formation. It's like, the painting leads now, and then the writing leads, and then the acting leads, it's ebb like that's how it is. Ebb and flow. Yeah. But everything still informs and feeds in, Right. Like the visual art, like, we're working in film, so it's a very visual medium too, know? So, so that acting actually has its visual medium, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with. Like what is this shot, and what's my relation in this shot? What am I doing in this shot? Being here just spatially. Even, you got to think of it's so complicated, man, when you're acting. It's just like, and the more you do it, and the more experience you have, and I have a lot of experience in the theater with live work and movies and TV, and they're all so different. Every one of those mediums is really different. And, and the more the more you could play with, which is really cool. So, so here, you have a script, and you have actors, and then you have the directors, and then you have the lighting, and then you have the visual shot. There's so many different levels to be alive in and to work in. It's just so beautiful.
Well, you're radiating right now, Michael Ornstein.
I'm happy to be with you, man.
This has been such a gift.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out, and make me promise, please come back.
Absolutely, I'll come back. And you got to visit me in Cleveland, man.
Ohio.
I'll come to Chicago and see you too.
Let's do it.
You know, man?
You got it.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
We'll meet in Detroit, whatever.
Dude, in all candor, this is embarrassing. I have not been to Detroit since I was a kid.
Let's go and explore that together.
We'll make that a field trip.
Grab Circus too, man.
Oh, shout out Michael Circus.
Michael Circus, man.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, man. Let's do that and explore.
That's great.
Looking forward.
All right, brother.
All right, my brother.
Be well. Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to like this episode and share it with your friends on social. And if you haven't already done so, please be sure to press subscribe and follow us on IG at Not Real Art Official. We appreciate the support. Sourdough out.